Hello there, and welcome once again to another episode of Forward into the Past. I'm J.C. Raday, your host and narrator, and today we're going to pick up where we left off last time in the Nick Carter mystery from 1915, The Call of Death, or Nick Carter's Clever Assistant. Now, before we get started, I would like to apologize to our listeners and help try to explain the irregularity of the release of this podcast. As of this moment, today, it is October 3rd, 2022, and since the first week in August, there has been a huge delay in the release of these stories. It's been wild. Now, to begin with, this particular story, The Call of Death, was not supposed to be recorded until after the new year, to begin January 2023. It had to be moved up because the story, which was supposed to be recorded in August, Nick Carter and the Mystery of St. Agnes Hospital, had some troubling themes and characters, which, in today's worldview, may have caused a lot of uncomfortable situations. So, this story had to be moved up. Now, just before I had planned to start recording this new story, however, I celebrated my anniversary with my wife by going away for several days, which, of course, delayed the recording. Now, when we got back from the getaway, our oldest cat, Lucy, had taken a turn for the worst. She was 16 and lived a long, long life, and now she was reaching the end. That weekend that I was supposed to start recording, I had to say goodbye to my 16-year-old fur kid. So I wasn't particularly in the mood to do any sort of recording. I had planned to start recording the following weekend, but as luck would have it, I don't know if it was due to the grieving process or whatever, but I managed to catch my summer cold, which I will do at least once every summer. It just so happened to be this particular weekend, so I had to wait another week before starting to record. Of course, the very following weekend was Labor Day weekend, so I hadn't planned on recording that weekend at all. One of the reasons being is that particular weekend was the opening weekend for Halloween Horror Nights at Universal Orlando. I happen to live in Orlando, and Halloween Horror Nights happens to be my wife's absolute favorite thing to do. So I indulged her and went along with her during opening week. This, of course, turned out to be a huge mistake for me and the podcast, because at some point over that weekend, I managed to catch the COVID-19 coronavirus. Luckily for me, I'm vaccinated, so the symptoms were relatively mild. But they still ravaged me enough to not be able to do the podcast the following weekend. 1 week after that, however, and I was relatively symptom-free, I was back in the saddle and managed to record 2 episodes that weekend. I was all prepared to record another 2 episodes this past week, when the only other thing that could have possibly happened to deter my recording actually did. You see, as I mentioned before, I live in Orlando, Florida, and just this past week, Florida was devastated by Hurricane Ian. Well, luckily for me, I live in the northwest part of Orange County, and my house was spared any damage. I suffered no loss of power or life, and none of my friends outside of power loss suffered any great damage either. They're all alive, healthy, and safe, which was the most important thing to me. But because of all that, there was absolutely no way I was going to do any sort of recording that week. And so, here we are. 60 days since this all started, and I'm still here. Now, it's been a very strange and incredibly rough 60 days. But that's the way it goes sometimes. Life just kind of happens, and you deal with whatever cards you're dealt with. And we just keep moving on. So, to all of you out there who have been following this podcast and wondering what the heck is going on with this guy. Is he not committed to recording? Is he having issues? Well, there's your answer. So I wanted to take this moment and let you know exactly what was going on here, and hopefully we can continue where we left off, and I can thank you for being very, very patient with me and putting up with all the weirdness that has been happening here over the last several months. At any rate, I'm ready to start recording, and I'm sure you're ready to start listening. So here we go. Continuing on where we left off, in the Nick Carter mystery, The Call of Death, or Nick Carter's Clever Assistant. Chapter 4. Nick Carter's Ruse. 2 o'clock found Nick Carter at the door of an office on the second floor of the local bank building. He was reading the tenant's sign on a polished brass plate. Kate Crandall, public stenographer. Nick listened briefly, hearing nothing from within, and he then opened the door and entered. The office was attractively furnished. A costly Persian rug covered the floor. Against one of the walls stood an expensive roll-top desk. On a stand nearby were 2 typewriters. On a table in the middle of the office, covered with books and magazines, was a huge cut-glass jar, literally overflowing with magnificent roses. Nick instantly noticed these costly furnishings, which were much too expensive for one who works for a living, and he drew a correct conclusion, that Kate Crandall had wealthy admirers, and that she had no scruples over accepting valuable tokens of their affection. She was seated in an armchair near one of the lace-draped windows, absorbed in a magazine story, when the detective entered. She was a pronounced brunette, strikingly handsome with regular features, a rich, velvety complexion, languorous dark eyes, and full red lips, a face evincing a sensuous nature and a fiery temper. Her fine figure was a bit showily clad. Several costly diamonds adorned her shapely hands. One high-heeled French shoe and a bit of silk hosiery protruded from below her stylish blue skirt. "Flying fancy is right," thought Nick, recalling Patsy's prediction. Looking up when he entered, Kate Crandall received him with a smile and laid aside her magazine. "Good afternoon, sir," she said, greeting him agreeably. "Take a seat." "You are Miss Crandall?" returned Nick inquiringly. "Yes, sir," said Kate, bowing. "My name is Henderson," said Nick, taking a chair. "Do I find you busy just now?" "No, indeed, not at present. What can I do for you?" "Not very much now, Miss Crandall, but considerable later, providing your terms are satisfactory and my work agreeable to you," Nick said suavely. "I work entirely on a space basis." That will suit me." "What is the character of the work, Mr. Henderson?" "I am a writer of photodramas for a leading New York moving picture concern," Nick glibly informed her. "I have a long contract with the firm and require the help of a competent stenographer to prepare my scenarios. The work is not difficult and will pay you well." "I will undertake it," said Kate, nodding her finely poised head. "I can discontinue it if found distasteful." "Oh, certainly." "When will you want me to begin?" "Probably on Monday, when I will show you how I wish the work done and discuss other details with you." "That will be agreeable to me, Mr. Henderson," said Kate unsuspiciously. Nick had detected, up to that time, nothing beyond the points mentioned, but he had hit upon a ruse for evoking a self-betrayal from the woman, as may be inferred from his artful pretensions. "I will see you here Monday morning, then," said he, apparently about to go. But he immediately added, as if hit with an idea, "Before leaving, by the way, I will implore you to write a letter for me to my firm, whom I wish to inform of my intentions. Will you take it in shorthand, or I will typewrite it from your dictation?" Miss Crandall interposed, taking a seat at one of the typewriters and deftly adjusting a sheet of blank paper. "Shall I date it from here, Mr. Henderson?" "If you please," said Nick. Miss Crandall's tapering fingers moved swiftly over the keys. Nick saw at a glance that she was an expert. He moved his chair near the end of the table, to a position enabling him to watch her face. "All ready, Mr. Henderson?" She glanced at him and smiled a bit oddly. Nick began to dictate. Klein and Costa, Eckley's Building, New York. Dear Sirs, Nick continued amid continuing clicking. I have today made arrangements with a competent stenographer, and will set to work upon the series of dramas we were discussing yesterday. You may expect a scenario of the first one early next week. I think you will prefer, for a starter, the sensational detective drama I mentioned to you, featuring the peerless American sleuth Nick Carter. The story of the drama relates to the mysterious disappearance of a parish priest who, in spite of his religious vows, falls desperately in love with a very wealthy and beautiful girl who— The clicking suddenly stopped. Kate Crandall's deft hands had gone wrong. She had struck several wrong keys. She reached for an eraser, saying quickly, "One moment, please." Nick saw that she was turning pale. Her arching dark brows had knit perceptibly. "Oh, certainly," he said suavely. Kate erased the misprinted letters and readjusted the traveler. She then gazed steadily at the detective for a moment, as if fain to read his mind, and she then said tersely, "Continue." Nick went on without a change of countenance, quite as if there had been no interruption. The wealthy and beautiful girl, deeply in love with the parish priest, permits him to renounce his vows and pledges her hand to him in marriage. The shapely, swiftly moving hands of the stenographer were unsteady, were trembling visibly. It appears, however, that another woman suspects the intentions of the parish priest, a woman involved with him in a way ultimately revealed in the drama, and she subjects him to a secret espionage, which leads to a crime— The clicking stopped short again. A crimson flood imbued Kate Crandall's cheeks for a moment, then faded quickly, leaving her ghastly pale. She steadied herself with an effort. She reached up and removed the sheet of paper from the typewriter, tearing it quickly and tossing it into a wastebasket. "Excuse me," she said curtly, her dark eyes turning upon Nick with a fiery glance. "I have decided, Mr. Henderson, that I will not take your work. Do not call here again, sir. Good day." She arose while speaking, then turned quickly and gazed from the window. "Dear me!" Nick exclaimed with affected astonishment. "Why so, Miss Crandall? What is the meaning of this sudden change of mind?" "I do not care to make any explanation," she said sharply. "Attribute it to a whim, to caprice, or anything else that suits you." "But you must have a reason, some cause for—" "The work would be distasteful," snapped Kate, wheeling sharply around and facing him. "I shall not discuss the matter. That settles it." "On the contrary, Miss Crandall, it does nothing of the kind," Nick now said quite sternly. "This matter will be settled only when it is settled right. I know, without your informing me, the cause of the attitude you have now taken." "And I know, without your informing me, sir, that you are not what you pretend you are," Kate angrily retorted. "You are here with covert designs. I have nothing more to say to you. Leave my office." "Not until you have told me what you know about the disappearance of the Reverend Austin Maybrick," Nick sternly rejoined. "Disappearance of Mr. Maybrick?" "That is what I said." "He has disappeared, then?" "You know that he has, and—" The woman interrupted him with a derisive laugh. "I know nothing of the kind," she said curtly. "I neither know nor care anything about it. "You know, at least, what occurred in the rectory last evening," Nick sharply interrupted. "You were spying outside of the library window at the time. You know—" "See here, Mr. Whatever your name may be," Kate cut in defiantly. "Anything that I know I shall keep to myself. You are a detective, that's what you are. But I'll put you wise to one thing right off the reel. You haven't got anything on me, nor can you get anything. You cannot persuade, frighten, nor intimidate me. I will tell you nothing, absolutely nothing, and you may go to thunder. Get out of my office now, or I will call a policeman and have you ejected. That's all. I'm done with you." Nick came to a quick decision. He saw plainly that the woman meant what she said, and could not be turned then and there. He abruptly changed his course. "Very well," he replied. "It will not be necessary to call a policeman." Nick turned with the last and departed. He had directed Patsy to wait in a doorway on the opposite side of the street, in case he might want to signal him from Kate Crandall's window. Nick reasoned that she might watch from the window and see him if he rejoined his waiting assistant. He wrote a few lines in his notebook while descending the stairs, then tore out the leaf and folded it. As he walked briskly up the street, A moment later, he caught Patsy's eye and dropped the wad of paper on the sidewalk. "Gee, there's something doing," thought Patsy. "He don't want to be seen again with me. He has dropped me written instructions." Sauntering across the street, Patsy picked up the paper and read what Nick had written. "Kate Crandall knows, but will not speak. Shadow her constantly until otherwise directed. Be governed by circumstances. I'm off for home. Phone me there of any discoveries." What exactly does Kate Crandall know, and what did she see outside of the rectory? How will Nick get her to confess? And how does Reverend Maybrick's disappearance fit into everything? We'll find out on the next exciting episode of Nick Carter and the Call of Death. Hey gang, thanks again for listening. Keep sharing the stories, and be a good human. Bye for now.